training core stabilizers for beginners. That's what we're going to talk about in this tutorial, and we're going to take it from sort of a beginner level and we're going to progress it through. So what we're going to talk about, first of all, what core stability is, what it kind of looks like within exercise, then we'll start applying some exercises to that to create the core stability that we need, and as I mentioned, go from that beginner level and build it up through intermediate and into advanced. What is core stability? It's very simple. It's muscle timing that creates smoothness of movement. So what that might look like in everyday life, a very simple way of doing it, and there is an aspect of core stability, but the example that I'm about to give is more, let's just say, foot, ankle and hip stability. What we're going to look at for the rest of the tutorial is the hip, the spine and the shoulders. But to represent this and help bring it to life a little bit, if I was to come up onto one leg and then I was to go into a hip hinge, that smoothness of movement up on one leg is that stability. So the foot, the ankle, the knee and the hip are all nice and stable. And then what that's creating is that smoothness of movement. So the movement muscles, the hip flexor here and the glute at the back are able to create that smooth movement. So if the small stabilizers weren't timing properly, what would be happening would be this. And then what then would happen is it would affect the smoothness of the movement. So what we're trying to get from the muscles of the hip, of the spine and of the shoulder are to get them to time well. Because as we mentioned here, if we just take the knee as the example, because it's in between the ankle and the foot, if this knee is wobbling, it's showing that muscles on the inside of the leg and the outside of the leg are trying to catch up with each other. So when it drops in, the muscle on the inside is contracted and this one's relaxed. And then it's gone out because this one's contracted and this one's relaxed. And it's constantly in that battle of trying to get into sync with each other. But when they're stable, the knee stays straight and the movement is smooth because those are holding everything in place so the hip flexor and the glute can do the flexion and the extension of the hip that we've described. Now we're going to introduce some exercises. We're going to start at a beginner level and we're going to build it up into a little bit more of an advanced level. Now what we're going to do with these exercises is we're going to enhance the stabilizing effect or how to access the stabilizing muscles is we're going to try and take the movers, the hip flexor and the glute out of the equation. So we're going to come down onto one knee. So we're now, hip flexors, all that's really got to do is stabilize the lower spine. It doesn't need to flex the hip. It just needs to hold the spine in place. So that's going to be a part of our spine stability. What we've also done is put the knee on the floor so the hip doesn't need to do its movement. So all of our sort of conscious attention can go on staying stable. So we're just going to start at the most basic level, most fundamental level, and this is something that's built into all of the training that I do and all of the programs that I write or the online programs that I write on my website or for my website. And that is, we start at the most fundamental and we, in a sense, become competent there. We then take it up to the next level, become competent, take it up to the next level, become competent. So, we are on one knee. And all we want to be able to do is hold this position smoothly. So although there's no movement, what we're not doing is we're not jerking from side to side. So we want to become competent there. What we would then do is move that foot across. So now my sort of base of support is narrower. So now I'm going to challenge my balance that little bit more. So I'm holding here, put my hands across my chest. If I need to, I can put my arms out. But again, we want to get good there, or competent there. Then we come right across, and what you might now start to find is that there's a little bit of wobble now, because on my base of support is very narrow, I'm on a tightrope. So I now have to concentrate on that a little bit more. I can talk freely out here, but now I have to concentrate a little bit more on my balance when I'm in here. So you can start to see the the stabilising muscles twitching a little bit more. But again, the smoother or the better timed they are, the more smooth this posture becomes and position becomes. So when we're at the beginner level, it's just trying to get that static posture and get that balance. And by also going on one knee, we take the foot and the ankle out, and it's a lot more based on the hip and obviously the spine. And what we're going to do later is bring in the shoulder as well. Part 2 is more about the intermediate level, but again, with regards to the programs that I write and the workouts that I deliver, both in face-to-face and online, it's never just beginner, and then you step up, and then just advance, and then intermediate, and then step up and just advance. They mould into one another. So what I start doing is start introducing more intermediate exercises into a beginner's program, and then you phase out the beginner exercises and add in intermediate, and then the same happens as we go up. So what's going to happen now is we're now going to add and introduce some movement to it, and I'm also going to use a weight. So we're going to stick with the same position, down on one knee. Now what we might also do is come out into that wide base again, because we're now challenging with a weight or with a movement. So what we would do is, it doesn't have to be a weight, but basically you would come into this position. Now all that's happening now is we're shifting our centre of gravity. So our stabilising muscles now have to respond not only to being upright and balanced, but also a shifting centre of gravity. So just by moving my arms across, I start to shift the centre of gravity. And then I can come all the way in here. And I got that shifting of the centre of gravity. That's without any weight. What I can then do is introduce a weight. So this is an 8 kilo weight. And I would just do exactly the same. Hold it down here, and then up and across. And you can start to see a little bit more of a fight between these opposing stabilising muscles. If I come across a little bit more, and you'll start to see the movement start to unsmoothen itself, and it will start to get a little bit rougher. I can't move it quite as fast, and I've got to concentrate a lot more. And that's what we're trying to look for as we progress exercises. So we want to find a position which is stable, which we can get the muscles working the way we want them. Then we want to challenge that. Then challenge it a little bit more, challenge it a little bit more, challenge it a little bit more. But we only challenge it a little bit more with weight, with movement, when we know we've in some respects sort of become competent and mastered the previous level. So when we're talking about the intermediate level, we're just trying to use weight, use movement to, in some respects, move the centre of gravity, so the stabilising muscles have to respond to that. What we'll now do is we'll look at the more advanced part to it. For the advanced part, we're going to stick to being on one knee, and then in the next part, I'm going to show you how we would bring movement back into it. So we can bring the powerful movers back into the equation, because as I mentioned at the start, we've taken them out for now. So again, we've gone through that beginner, intermediate, and now we're up in the more advanced type of region. But again, what we're doing, starting wide, we're now not just going to go from side to side, we're going to go all the way around. So I'm going to take it round. So again, when the movement is smooth, the shoulders are nice and stable. So I might have someone that's got slightly more, slightly less range of movement in the shoulder, so they find it a little bit harder to get around, so they're trying to compensate. So we may then have to go and open up that range of movement. The exercise itself will go some way to doing that, but we may just open it out a little bit more, and then we're getting that, again, that smoothness of movement. So it's not just about the exercise, there can be some stretching added into it. But basically, what we would then do is, again, exactly like we've done with the beginner and the intermediate, we take the base of support away. We're also changing the centre of gravity, but this time we're taking it all the way around. And then the arms are creating, and you can feel, or you can see, I can feel, that it's more unstable, and that the stabilising muscles are having to work harder to keep the movement nice and smooth. So what you can see from these 3 stages is how we would progress the exercises during the online training or online program. What we then need to do, as I mentioned, is integrate movement back into it. And that's what we'll look at next. And we're going to do that by making the exercise more dynamic. So we want to get, now that we know that we've got these stabilising muscles, nice and they're timing well, so the movement is smooth. What we now need to do is introduce movement back into it. And I'm just going to use just one exercise. I don't want to take too long for this, but basically what we're now doing is we are going from this slightly hinged position, bringing the glute max in to powerfully move up. We've also got a little bit of deltoid, a little bit of pec, going to be working as we move as the weight comes across. So we sort of like that, and then down, and down. So we're generating the power from the extending hip, and then what we're looking to do is keep that movement smooth, but what we know is that our stabilising muscles are timing much more effectively. If we just go straight into that exercise and start throwing it around, it's in a sense being laid on a slightly more crumbly foundation. If we can get these steps put in place, then when we get onto these sort of bigger, more dynamic, more functional type of movements, then what we're doing is we're building from the ground up. We've built from the beginner level to the intermediate to the advanced, and then we're integrating movement back in, creating those powerful movements with a foundation of stability underneath. If you found this tutorial helpful and you want to build core strength and stability, if you're a beginner that wants to go and take your core training to the next level, please do click the link below. You'll go through to the How to Build Core Strength and Stability 12-week program with also intermediate and advanced workouts to follow. Complete the program, then you get access to the intermediate and advanced core training library, and then you can build core strength and stability in 12 weeks from beginner to advanced.